are listening to episode 137 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Shaun Kranish of Electra Health. This was a really fun discussion, and I was really impressed with his broad knowledge on the topic of EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, also called EMR, electromagnetic radiation. Shaun is a building biologist, and he describes what that is at the start of the show. They basically focus on the health of the environment, of the home. And when you get into the topic of EMFs in the natural health space, I think a lot of people are turned off because they see tons of quantum devices, stickers, pendants, little sacred geometry things that are supposed to mitigate the EMFs. And it really gets into the world of spirituality and beliefs at that point. There's not much physical evidence when we're talking about Wilhelm Reich and orgone energy and organite pyramids. I used to be into all that stuff. I used to make those things with my friends. I never felt any difference whatsoever. Anyone I ever gave it to never felt any difference whatsoever. But when you get into actual meters and measuring the effects of your mitigation and see results, that's where the rubber really hits the road. And that's where the subject becomes real and not just a matter of whatever you believe. And if you believe that you're protected, then you are. I don't think it's that simple. I think we're getting attacked at a massive scale, and we need to be aware of it and take necessary precautions. And maybe there's something to some of these spiritual devices and techniques, but as I say in the interview, I think you should take care of the practical stuff that you can physically measure with meters first before getting into the esoteric stuff that may or may not work. So there's a lot of practical tips in here. I'll put the link below to Shaun's website where you can check out the EMF blocking paint, the best bed canopy. He talks about that. I ask him about sleeping on magnets. We talk about LED bulbs. We talk about routers. We talk about whole house dirty electricity filters. And one really practical tip that's absolutely free that involves your breaker box. So you'll really love this one. It's a game changer for your health. Here is Shaun Kranish. All right, we are here with Shaun Kranish. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I've been really into EMFs for really the last 11 years when I got into natural health. And it was one of those things I started studying with light and water, just the magnetism aspect. And it just made so much sense that these things affect us just as much as food, if not more. And like the quality of our environment matters because it affects our biology. And so I got into grounding first and rod to earth, and then eventually got into dirty electricity. And I was living with my parents for quite a while, and so I couldn't mitigate the Wi-Fi. But then I finally moved out and was able to unplug that at night and then put it on a timer. And it's just been an awesome journey of learning. And through that process, I discovered your website, Electra Health, and what you provide. And I was really impressed with just all the mitigation tools that you have available there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's we've been building the website since 2008 and adding new products on a regular basis. Most of our products really come up. Many of the products we offer are unique, and they're products that we've developed and that we manufacture here in the United States. And they're one of a kind products that really come up as solutions to problems that we're looking for, that I'm personally looking for myself and for my family. that I hear our customers are looking for, and people in the Building Biology Institute, of which I'm a part, and a very big believer in the work that they do there. So yeah, over the years we've been developing products, and we get the feedback from customers. Everything we do is based on testing and based on knowledge and testing. So everything has a measurable impact, and that's what we're really looking for.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd never heard of the Building Biology Institute. Um, do they focus on just creating a healthy home in general, like looking at VOCs and like the whole shebang, or mostly EMFs?
So yeah, so the Building Biology Institute, the building biology started in post World War II Germany, when they were rebuilding, and they were finding that people were becoming very ill as they rapidly built houses out of materials that hadn't been used, using construction techniques that hadn't been used before. And so then you had moisture and mold, and VOCs, and chemical issues, and people were becoming very ill. So building biology, or biobiology as it's called in German, started there. And then about 30 years ago, a German man brought it to the United States, and it focuses on all aspects of environmental health, and also green, so-called green technology, as far as taking care of our environment as well, in our communities, and the environment, working with nature. But as far as the health aspects, you're right on. Indoor air quality, you've got water quality, and you've got VOCs, chemicals, building materials, and building techniques. As building science is a part of the Building Biology Institute. They integrate building science in there with how buildings react in their environments with heat and moisture and things. So, but recently, actually, I'd say in the last 2 decades, or actually maybe even a little more, EMF has become the front runner concern for building biology and for environmental health, as practitioners have been finding that EMF is having more of an impact on people than some of the other things we just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've listened to a few lectures by Martin Paul, and I think a lot of like mainstream people are just really skeptical. They think EMF damage is like a conspiracy theory, but when you look at the clinical data of how it acts on calcium, voltage gated calcium ion channels, and how it stresses the cell. I mean, you don't even have to go into how our body works on frequency and photons or whatever. You don't have to even go there. You could just talk about like what we know, right, with the calcium ion channels and the damage it causes there.
Yeah, I mean, our body is regulated and run with just countless very, very subtle electrical signals, and whenever you have two fields, the two fields always interact. So if we have an artificial field generated from power, generated from AC electricity, generated from wireless devices, electronics in the home, those are going to have an effect. And yeah, science has shown, actually, since the 40s, I believe, there's been published science, particularly military research since then, showing the effects of electromagnetic fields and radiation and microwaves on the human body. So it's a very well established scientific fact. The problem is it's just an extremely inconvenient truth, as we love our gadgets and we love our technology. I do too. So I mean, I used to be an IT consultant. I was a computer gamer. I mean, I grew up on this stuff. I was born in '85, and 97 I had internet. 99 I had 98 I had high speed internet. I was building computers at like the age of 12, 11 or 12. And I mean, I love computers. I love the internet. I love technology. And that's kind of what brought me into this, is working around them and then becoming environmentally ill, and then figuring out, kind of like happenstance through luck, figuring out that it was the exposure to high frequencies, dirty electricity in power lines, that was causing me a lot of fatigue and just inability to function normally. So it was really affecting my health. And once I cleaned that up, my health rebounded completely, and I didn't experience that fatigue. And so that got me on the track to wanting to know as much as I could and learn as much as I could about it. I met with Dave Stetzer shortly after I discovered all this, and I always kind of I always kind of thought electronics and electricity give off fields, and that they could affect the body. But I didn't know it was such an issue that it was affecting so many people, and that there were so many people looking for solutions. I met with Dave Stetzer, learned just a great deal from that man, and he's done really incredible work to try to push the ball forward and help people. He spent a lot of time just helping individuals who need it.
Yeah, I had him on my podcast, and I think he dropped a black pill about grounding, because a lot of people think grounding or earthing is the end all be all solution for EMF mitigation, but that's kind of a nuanced thing. According to him, you could actually do damage being barefoot in context of like under power lines or in a highly populated city. Um,
Yeah, and that is true. So I agree. I definitely agree with Dave on that. So being in the Building Biology Institute and running electrohealth.com since 2008, over the years I've spoken personally with thousands and thousands of people, and so I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of people, and you really get very useful information on what works and what doesn't. And as far as grounding goes, hearing the stories from my clients, from my customers, from other practitioners in the Building Biology Institute, I believe grounding can have positive effects. There is limited, I would say like low quality science on it right now, but anecdotally, yes, I do believe grounding can have positive effects. But I also know through the same means, anecdotally, and well, not only anecdotally, but I mean, you can hook up scopes and you can measure what's going through the earth, what's on the ground wire, which is connected to the neutral anyways. So, if you hook yourself to the ground in your house, you're hooking yourself to neutral. If you hook yourself to a rod in the earth, you're getting pretty close to neutral. It's not, you're not quite as directly connected, but you're not very far away from a billion other ground rods that are all hooked to neutral as well. So it's the entire earth is part of the grid at this point, and the entire earth is like the neutral wire on the power lines. So there are ways to do it that are safer and better, I would say. And the number one thing is don't do it around electronics. Don't ground yourself at the computer. Don't stand on a mat. Don't hook up something to your wrist or ankle or anything at the computer. If you're gonna earth or ground, I prefer to do it if you're gonna do it indoors at all. At the very least, I would turn off the breakers and shut off all the power, de-energize the wires in the walls around you, and any rooms above, below, or next to you, so you get a good space from the live wires. Otherwise, you're putting yourself in the middle of, you're connecting yourself to Earth, and you're increasing the effect of interaction with those live wires, with the high voltage electric fields, which contain high frequencies. And so, because I've talked to lots of people who have done this at the computer, they've done it around electronics, or they've done it in an environment that's bad. They have things plugged in around their bed, or they have the power in their bedroom on, and then they're earthing. Um, Sometimes you can still get a benefit, but other times you can have trouble sleeping. You can get burning and tingling, and some people could go very their health could turn very, very poorly from that. They could get very ill from doing that. So it is a risk, and I would say do it in an environment that is clean as possible, where you're getting rid of the electronics, getting rid of the electricity before you hook yourself up to ground. And we're actually working on another solution that might make earthing safer as well. A device that we could plug in to filter out some of those high frequencies while using earthing equipment.
Oh, that's really awesome. Yeah, years ago I saw Clint Ober live and saw his documentary. I think it was like the release of his earthing documentary, and it just makes sense. I mean, even if, like you said, there's not robust science on it, it just makes sense that it would be good for us. I actually just ordered your Swiss Shield Ultra like bed canopy, and I've actually never used one, but would that be okay to combine with a grounding sheet? I mean, in my situation, like I'm out of the city about 45 minutes or so, pretty deep in the forest, fully off grid, with neighbors being
Okay.
pretty far away.
Awesome.
Would you ever combine like an earthing sheet with a bed canopy?
Yeah. With that particular, and that's the Natural Ultra canopy, and I believe we're the only ones that offer that as a canopy that you can click and order. That one does offer more protection against electric fields. Now, if you're off grid, are you on so you have solar power? Is the house all AC wired up with outlets and things like normal, or?
Yeah, fortunately the panels are on a pole mount away from the house. So
Okay.
I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that having solar panels in your roof can increase your exposure. Is that true?
It's definitely, yeah, it's going to have an effect. I mean, it can pick up radio frequencies. It can block. There's beneficial radiation from the cosmos as well, that we're supposed to receive. So, but a lot of nowadays it's. I think we're really getting more of the negative stuff that we don't want to be getting from our own generation, our own towers, and radio, TV, cell, all that, satellite, all that stuff. But yeah, that could interact, since you've got conductive metallic items that you're putting over your head. So yeah, I prefer it to be away as well.
Mm-hmm. That's
Definitely.
awesome. Yeah, and I have it hardwired here. Like I pretty much never need Wi-Fi. I use Ethernet connections. My router has the Wi-Fi turned off all the time, and my phone just works by itself with satellite. So I guess I'm a higher elevation. So,
Okay.
but yeah,
Going back to that canopy, the what I like about the Natural Ultra, and why we made that available, is that the material is treated so that with carbon, which is inert and safe, and so it's externally conductive, so it can be grounded. So at least you have the option there, and it also helps with the blocking radio frequency a little bit as well. There's a better Faraday cage effect, with it being internally and externally conductive. So you do have that option, and I would always recommend that people, if they're going to do anything with grounding or earthing, to do it very carefully and cautiously, and really listen to their bodies. I would still encourage the shutting off of electricity nearby, if which is usually easy to do with the breaker, and then we even have remote switches where you can just hit a button and that's going to go off. So I would encourage that if you're going to do grounding or earthing, and then definitely listen to your body, because we just want to be careful that we're not doing anything that's going to increase exposure or cause issues in the body, because everything, like you kind of compared this to food earlier, and it's very true. I mean, what we eat, whether we eat meat or this kind of meat, or how the meat was raised, and which vegetables and which vitamins we take, and it all greatly impacts and changes our health. I mean, I think our DNA expressions change based on what we eat and how we exercise and everything. So, yeah, EMF is the same way. So, everybody's a little different. I wish I could say that, yeah, we have a solution for everything that fits everyone, but no, there are some things that work for some people and don't work for other people. And sometimes people will also react negatively to a few things as well. So it's good to be aware and pay attention to your body.
Those are great points. Yeah, I often think of people living in an apartment complex, and that's a lot of people. And from my perspective, it makes sense to just kind of Faraday cage yourself, especially when you sleep, and don't worry about grounding or earthing, and just try to get to the beach or a lake or a stream or something and go barefoot a couple times a week. But I noticed that like a lot of these EMF shielding tents and sleeping bags have been coming out over the years, and I think that's really cool, because I think hotels are a killer, right? Like a million Wi-Fi signals going on.
Oh yeah, hotels, and not only Wi-Fi and cell towers and stuff. They get a lot of attention, but what gets less attention is the power lines. The AC power in buildings gets less attention, and particularly in hotels, everything has gone to high efficiency lighting, so LEDs and compact fluorescent lighting. So you've got that everywhere, and so the power is just horrendous. The amount of high frequency signals that are vibrating throughout the environment, and your body is picking up, and those are dissipating internally in the body. The amount of signals is just it's crazy. We're exposing. This is a huge experiment. We're exposing ourselves to stuff that, I mean, humans did not develop with or evolve, or whatever, however you want to look at it. This is all new. A lot of this is new just in the last 40 years. Power quality was much better prior to the 70s, and we had mostly smooth, what are called linear loads, like you think of an incandescent light bulb, or you think of a motor, a single or double stage motor that just it's like on and off, right? It's so before all the dimming, and before all the fluorescence, and now LEDs, before all the computers, the TVs, before all these devices, variable speed drives or variable frequency drives, which are now like in your air conditioners and furnaces and refrigerators and freezers and all sorts of devices. These are causing just unprecedented exposure to frequencies in the spectrum that I mean just orders of magnitude higher, or really exponentially higher levels of exposure to these frequencies. And so we're in an experiment, and I do firmly believe, based on all the research I've read, and all the doctors and scientists and who I've spoken with, I believe this is the number one environmental issue. So electromagnetic fields and radiation is the number one environmental health issue of our time.
I fully agree with that. Yeah, I just saw a video recently of Dr. Mercola talking about that exponential increase, and it was like like crazy amount, like quadrillions or something. Increase. I don't think people realize it's not just like a times 10 or 100 or 1,000 or a million. It's like multiple times that,
which
higher.
Would be significant. Yeah, I mean, even that would be it'd be significant. 10 times is a lot, but Oh yeah, but these are numbers that oh my goodness,
It's a lot of
so
like,
so
yeah.
yeah, anything we can do to reduce that, and once again, so going back to the Building Biology Institute, that's why I'm such a huge fan with that organization and the philosophy, which is nature is the gold standard, and um, so what we want to do is really reduce our exposure and try to make our indoor environments as close to nature as possible. And when it comes to EMF, EMI, EMF, EMR, that means sometimes shielding or using products that are shielded, like shielded cords. We do a lot with shielded grounded cords and Ethernet. We try to ground computers. So there's shielding and grounding, and then there's reducing exposure. There's filtering as well with the power. Um, since you have a solar system, that's something we should. I don't know if we want to talk about now, but at some point we should talk about your solar system there, because I'm a big fan of solar, but there are definitely better ways to do it, and not so good ways to do it as well. And there's definitely a lot that can be done with solar to make it cleaner. But yeah, bringing our indoor environments closer to nature and trying to reduce this exposure, because we know, I mean, we know the boat we're in. And so the best we can do is measurably reduce exposure as much as possible, and that's what we go for. We like everything we do to be measurable. Um, so that's our approach at Electra Health. And
Yeah, I love all the meters. I recently just got the acoustimeter, um, because I have decent internet out here. Like I'm way out, and this interview is just flawless. There's no breaks or anything. But I got Starlink recently just to mess with it, and using your meters, put an RF meter up to it. The other day I switched it on and I turned on the acoustimeter, and it tripled. It was like um, zero point zero 0.03 volts per meter, and then it jumped to like 1.5 or something,
oh
or like
wow,
or 150. I mean, and uh, it was quite a jump, and it seems like you can't turn off that Wi-Fi on the Starlink router. Because I tried kind of plugging it into another router or something. So as far as I know, the only solution is to like Faraday cage that router to keep the Wi-Fi contained, and then put an Ethernet. But it just seems like too much work at this point. Um,
that's too bad. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the other thing you do is like bury it in the ground outside. That's probably what I would do. Yeah, I signed up for Starlink. I haven't encountered a client with one yet, so I haven't ever measured one. But I signed up for as a backup internet.
mhm.
But I don't know what kind of equipment they're doing, and whether or not you can shut off those wireless signals. And that's the problem with with the equipment that the internet service provider gives you. Um, a lot of times it's very difficult to get to shut that off, and you have to call them up, you have to deal with multiple people, and you definitely have to use a meter to measure, because a lot of times they'll say, oh yeah, we turned it off, and you've got your Safe and Sound Pro 2 or your acoustimeter, and the thing is still cooking away, dishing out that signal. Sometimes you can go in there in the user interface and click off, but it still puts out the signal. It's sometimes the light, like the Wi-Fi light on the router, will turn off, and it's still putting out the signal. So the only way to really know is to have a meter. So everybody should have an RF meter, that's for sure. And my favorite one currently is the Safe and Sound Pro 2. So that's the one I recommend. But yeah, something like that. Yeah, your other option would be to. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, those things generate heat, so they need to breathe. So to put them in a Faraday cage, you'd have to use like a screen material or something. But another approach we've recommended and done before is you know like cable internet, for example. So cable TV, the round coaxial, like Comcast Spectrum, all that, are Xfinity, and so I mean, that cable brings an RF signal in, so it's not a clean, even though it's like wired, it's still not a completely clean thing. I mean, you're still bringing radio frequency into the house with a cable connection. And so an option to be perfectly clean would be to um, put equipment on the outside of the house or out in the yard and convert it over to fiber optic. So you'd have your cable modem, and then you'd go from the cable modem to fiber optic, and then bring fiber optic into the house, and then you're bringing, no electric fields, no magnetic fields, no radio frequency. You've converted it to light, and so you've completely isolated and spaced yourself out from those frequencies on the cable line.
Wow, that makes sense.
So
Yeah.
So there's always options, whether it's Starlink or something. There's always workarounds, and that's why we offer phone consulting, because with so many different types of devices and so many brands and models and makes and situations, we can work one-on-one with people and like let them know what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. What do you say, in general, hardwiring the house with Ethernet is the way to go versus Wi-Fi?
Yes, I would. So I prefer shielded Ethernet. So like Cat 6A. Now they also have Cat 7 and Cat 8, which is fine. They're just a little more expensive and thicker, but probably a better future proof. So Cat 8 would be fine. All those are shielded. So the Cat 6A, there may be some Cat 6A that's not shielded, so you have to make sure you get the shielded version. And I believe all Cat 7 is shielded, and I know all Cat 8 is shielded, so you're good there. So what we do is we run that shielded cable, and then what we need to do is terminate and connect that cable properly so that it's grounded at one end only. So if you think of like where you have your router and then you have a switch, or the routers have like a 4-port switch built into them, or maybe you get another switch because you need more ports, and that could be metal. So if you hook up your shielded Ethernet at that end with a proper connector and everything, and let's say you have a 24-port switch that's grounded because it has a 3-prong power cord that plugs into it. So now that Ethernet line is grounded, and that's going out through your walls or through your rooms. And now at the other end of it, if you have a metal connector and then you hook it up to a desktop computer, for instance, that desktop computer is already grounded. The Ethernet port on desktops I've never seen a desktop without a grounded Ethernet port. And so if you hook up a shielded cable to that and you connect them together, boom, you've created a ground loop because you're grounded at the desktop computer and you're grounded back at the switch. And so now you've created a ground loop, which creates just a mess of frequencies. So that's something we want to avoid. Double grounding a cable is basically what I'm talking about. So we want everything shielded and grounded at one end, and then we can break those grounds using, we have a Ethernet ground isolators on our website. That's one way to break it. Or you can strategically use plastic ports at one end. So like the little keystone, the little female jacks, you can use those at one end so that you don't create the ground loop.
Wow, that's fascinating. I love how this topic is so nuanced. Like the details really matter. It's kind of makes it more fun.
Yeah. With EMF, the devil's definitely in the details, and that's why we go to measurement and like, so for ground loops, you can buy a $10 continuity tester, or you can use a multimeter. So we're talking about something really cheap, and it's not not hard at all to use. You just gotta like look at a YouTube video really quick, and you're basically touching two metal things and seeing if a light or a beep, buzzer is going off, or what the reading is, and you'll know if you've got a ground loop there or not.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about, before I found your website, like shielding the power strip. I bought a bunch of those for me, like the 6-outlet shielded power strip.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like the fields emitting from these things, like your power strip or the Ethernet cable, are we talking about electric fields, and how far does that go? Because I figured with those things, it's kind of proximity to it, right? Like if you have your foot on it or something.
Definitely, yeah. So the more space, anytime you can shove those types of cables and arrange them in a way, every inch matters. Every inch helps. The farther away it is from your body. But yeah, so there we'd mostly be talking about electric fields. That would be the major exposure, like to a power strip and to cords plugged into a power strip. You can have magnetic fields too, which come from so electric fields are always there when the power is on. And so you have electric fields in your walls. You have electric fields going to all the light switches, all the outlets. You have electric fields as soon as you plug something into a wall. There's an electric field on there because anything you buy at the store is not shielded, period. And unfortunately, it's doesn't cost much to shield it, but they just don't at this point. So that's why we provide those. And so that's electric field, and that that can come out. We can measure that 30 feet away. It's you've got a high voltage. Like right around 340 volts peak to peak is what AC power. It's 120 volts RMS, but but peak to peak, we're talking like 340 volts. So it's a high voltage, and so shielding it can reduce like even if you can't get all the cords, because you're going to be plugging some cords in that, like some devices have non-removable cords that are not shielded. There's and so there's less you can do about those. There are some solutions, but they're not the easiest or most nice looking solutions. But the more cords that you can shield, the better. And another little trick, what you can do is so say you have a couple shielded cords and then you have unshielded cords around them. If you attach them together, if you attach the shielded cord to the, like if you use zip ties or something, or just tape them and just get them right next to each other, so they're in a cable bundle, those shielded cords will help reduce the electric field dramatically when they're together.
Wow, that's a cool trick. That's pretty awesome. Interesting. Yeah, there's so many directions. There's like a million questions I want to ask you. Currently, I'm building like a sensory deprivation float tank room in the garage. And I did like 2 coats of the Y-Shield EMF paint in there. And I'm pretty excited for that. I'll be like soaking in magnesium with no EMFs.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, the paint is a pretty fascinating thing to me. I was going down the YouTube rabbit hole, and I've seen some people that painted their entire house in that EMF shielding paint. But that's like if you don't want any electronics in your house, right? Because I would imagine it could turn it into a microwave, right? Like I had a friend walk in and he had his phone in his pocket, his iPhone or whatever, and I swear I felt like a like a twitch in my leg, just like 5 seconds of him being in there with the iPhone on, trying to get a signal, because it would just bounce around, right? If it's shielded.
Yeah, and then cell phones, they usually ramp up like when they're having trouble getting a signal, so then they ramp up and transmit even more strongly. So yeah, exactly. Faraday cage, it works both directions. It keeps stuff out, but it keeps stuff in as well. So that is with the paint, we've had clients. So this is an example of like where it works for some people in some environments, because there are so many variables, right? So we don't know what frequencies are in your environment versus someone else. It's going to be a completely different set of frequencies from the power systems, from the grid, and from the devices that you have, and neighbors and installations nearby. So the frequencies are going to be completely different, and then those different frequencies are going to react or interact differently with different materials and also geometric shapes. So So the shape of your house and your ceiling and your walls and um, all that comes into play. So we've had people. I mean, we've sold just a ton of paint over the years, and we've had people who painted their whole houses, inside. Some people outside too. And so we've had very good results, and we've had people that they had major health issues, and those were significantly improved once they used the paint. But then we've had other people who painted areas and they're like, "Oh, I can't stand it. There's something about it. I don't feel good." So we get some negative feedback on that as well. I'd say generally it's positive, but I don't know. I'd say generally positive. Most people with the paint is positive. It's fewer. I can only think of like a handful. I could probably count them on one hand of instances that were negative. But yeah, it does make you wonder, and it's kind of, once again, that's where like the necessity to measure comes in, because you could go in with a spectrum analyzer and take measurements, and you could do that before and after, and you can see what's affecting, and then you could kill the power. You could kill one device at a time in the house, one appliance at a time, and then you could see how that spectrum changes while you're doing that, and you can identify what's causing the problem.
Mm. A side question for you on the paint, like, kind of getting like a free consultation here, but hopefully it's useful for people. Like, in that EMF shielded room, there's basically going to be like a circulation pump and like some heaters. And my thought, and hopefully this is accurate, that it's more like the internet connection devices, like the wireless devices that would bounce around the room, like just running a pump in there and some heaters. It's still worth EMF shielding the room, right? Or and it's grounded too. But
Okay, yeah. So then the question would be like, okay, is the pump variable speed, or is it a single speed? Is it a variable speed drive or not? That would be very important, because you definitely would not want to bring a variable speed motor into that room. I'd say like I'd prefer to power anything in that room off of battery, like have like a big lithium ion battery pack, and power off of that. Now heating, I don't know. I don't know how feasible that is with heating, but the other thing you can do with heating too is you can bring heating in via water. You could run some heated water lines into the room, and then just use valves to regulate your temperature.
oh yeah, I have
You know
that.
what I mean?
I have hydronic floor heat in there, so I'm set up for that. So it should hopefully help.
Okay.
But
Yeah. So I mean, that's a way to like bring heat in without having
mm,
a heater. Now, I mean, if it's just a resistive heating element, so if it's just an electric heating device that doesn't have any electronics, but see, a lot of these have control electronics, and so and then they have um, integrated circuits, microchips and things that could produce those radio frequency signals. So that's what you'd want to try to avoid. You'd want to keep things like really old tech, basically. But having a resistive heating element, sure, that's fine.
mm,
Um, even with, I mean, I'd prefer AC not to be in the room. So I'd
mm.
prefer, once again, battery and using DC. But if you had to have a little AC for heating, yeah, you could do that, or you could bring heat via water line
Oh, cool. Yeah,
and
the
have all that
whole
outside.
that's awesome. Yeah, my whole house is run off big like computer tower looking lithium iron phosphate batteries.
Okay.
That's where all the
Mm-hmm.
power is coming from. So.
Yep. So you've got the battery capacity available for sure.
hmm So I want to go back to, you said the shape of your house matters, because I've heard of that in terms of like feng shui, like supposedly having
Sure.
corners isn't good for energy or whatever. Um, I do tend to feel better, like more of a, like the cabinet I'm in has high ceilings and stuff, and so that does feel better. But are you saying like the EMFs will react with like different shaped roofs or something.
Yeah, because radio frequency is very reflective. It's like it's like light. So it's gonna reflect off of different materials and different surfaces, um, to some extent. And so depending on the shape and depending on where there's metal and how it's all laid out, and then the relationship to ground and other things, yeah, it can cause it can cause some houses vary. I guess that is a big variable. And so with the paint, you're creating these huge reflective surfaces everywhere, with paint. So you're doing something very very out of the ordinary with the shielding paint,
Hmm.
which can benefit, but there are some risks to it as well.
Are you a fan of silver embedded clothing? Because there's a million health companies now creating brands with jackets and pants and baseball caps and even scarves and all these different things you could wear. And I rarely travel now, especially, but when I do to see my family or whatever, like just flying on a plane wearing that shielded clothing, I do feel so much less fatigued and less like stressed. Um,
Okay.
and I, I interviewed a owner of one of those companies on the show, and he was saying the way it works, like for example, with the baseball cap, is it's not blocking. The EMF will hit the silver and then just travel around your head instead of through it. I thought that was an interesting explanation.
Hmm. Well, I
Sounds
mean,
like
there's
dispersing.
yeah. I mean, with radio frequency, there's definitely a reflective effect, but you can also have a gathering effect too.
Hmm.
So I don't have a lot of data or personal experience, or experience from clients on the clothing. Uh, I mean, some people do swear by it, and it wouldn't surprise me, like what you're saying. That you feel less fatigue and less drained when traveling. I mean that. So yeah, it may well work. It's hard to that's something hard to measure. We can't like put probes inside inside the body and measure
Well, was it
measure the
accurate?
exposure.
Like I took your gigahertz, the RF HF35C, with the green antenna,
Oh yeah.
and I put that under my jacket, and I turned the volume all the way up, and it got completely quiet putting it under the jacket. Like that kind of says
Hmm.
something, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's saying that the material's been manufactured in a way where it's actually going to reflect and block that radio frequency. Definitely.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's something that we haven't ever carried. I've never carried
Mhm.
clothing. So I'm not against it. I'm very open minded to it, and yeah, you can always measure it like with probably a little harder like with an HF35C, but like with a Safe and Sound Pro, something like that. That's without the big antenna. You can definitely test material out that way. And then once again, it's just good to use it and really pay attention.
Mhm.
Use it and don't use it. I mean, of course, like anything, there is a psychosomatic effect with those things, which is very real. I mean, that's
Mhm.
in anything. There's a psychosomatic effect that's very real. Um, but obviously, they're doing something. They're measurably doing something, so they could be
Mhm.
helping.
Why do you like the Safe and Sound Pro? I'm gonna spend another few $100s on your website here because I think I have some of your other meters, and like the two I mentioned, the Acoustimeter I just got, and that's really cool. And then the one with the green antenna. Would you say this is different or better?
Is it did you get the Acoustimeter 11? Is that the one that you got recently, or the old Acoustimeter 10?
Um, Let me pull it up here.
Depends on how recent you got it as well.
I think it was a 35C, the newer one. Yeah, I wish I had it here, but
Okay. Yeah,
yeah.
I haven't used the 11 yet myself, but what I like about the Safe and Sound Pro is that it provides three measurements. Number one, I like the units that it uses. It uses microwatts per square meter. which is a finer, just kind of easier to read because you don't have to deal with decimal points.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of a finer, easier to read measurement, and so I like that. I like that one a lot. But the really cool thing about that meter is that it simultaneously gives you three measurements. So it gives you a peak, a constantly updated peak measurement, and then it gives you a max, which is your peak hold, your very highest peak that it holds on there. And then it gives you the RMS, or the average reading as well. So you're getting all three simultaneously at the same time. You don't have to hit any buttons or to switch between them or anything. That's really useful for practitioners, and well, I mean for people as well. But I can say as a practitioner that they designed that because they are practitioners, and they knew, they hit that one right on the head. That's the way to do it, because you want to be, if you can see all those three all at once, then you can compare one environment to another environment very quickly and very easily. So it's really nice, and
I still,
it's tested, third party tested, and it's a really solid meter.
oh, cool. Yeah, the one I have the most experience with is the big green antenna one, and I know you have to switch from RMS to peak, and I think anyone could buy a meter, and most people, including myself, are probably ignorant about how to read it. They just switch it on and they hear scary sounds. I mean, this is what I did. I'm like, okay, this has to be bad. But um, can we go into that for a minute? Is there an easy explanation of um, are you looking for a relationship between the peak and the other numbers, the RMS?
So really, like anything, the purpose of the meter measurement is to either compare two environments, like if you're house shopping or something, or if you're comparing two hotel rooms, something like that, um, or it's to identify sources and for the purpose of reducing them, right? So identify sources so that they can be shut off, they can be um, modified or disabled, and so that we can reduce the exposure. So all the readings are relative, of course, but like for radio frequency, you really need a meter. You need a meter in about the $200 to $400 range, a meter with sound. And so really the only ones I recommend right now are the Safe and Sound Classic, the we still have Acousticom 2s that's made by the makers of the Acoustimeter. Those are good too. But then there's our favorite right now is the Safe and Sound Pro, and that's the one with the three readings that I was just talking about. And because those have sound, like you said, you can actually hear the signal. So that's, you've probably noticed, that's super useful. Sometimes it's the sound is more useful than the readings, even, to know like which direction it's coming from, because you can hold the meter up to your body. So you can hold the Safe and Sound Pro 2 up to your kind of your stomach area, right, just below the chest, and hold it up to your body, stand facing one direction, and then you can go 90 degrees, go 180 degrees, turn your body holding the meter in the same position, and the reading, if the source is behind you, the reading is going to drop and the sound's going to drop. And if the source is coming in front of you, like if it's an external source like a cell tower, that's not visible, or if it's a neighbor, something like that, with a Wi-Fi or with like wireless speakers or something, then you'll be able to easier identify like where that's coming from, which is absolutely essential if you're going to even consider for a moment of potentially doing any shielding. You need to know where the stuff's coming from, because sometimes you only have to shield one wall, or right behind you, right behind the bed or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because you don't have to. I think one of the myths with the paint is that you have to cover every square inch. But in that room I mentioned with the door wide open that's painted, I bring the meters in there. It still zeroes out if I walk in there with the door wide open.
Oh, okay. Because you're in
So
such a clean environment where you're located. That's
Mhm.
awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome. And yeah, for most people that would not be the case. For most people living in, cities, suburbs, and with cell towers and neighbors and everything, and just FM, AM transmission, FM transmission, digital television transmission. Some of the things that we don't talk about as much, but they're there, and they're greatly contributing to that artificial RF environment. And so, yeah, for most people to get an entire room down, you really got to cover everything, and you got to cover the trim. You got to cover, all these little gaps and cracks, or where the RF comes in, like light, um, brightening brightening the room, so to speak. Um, and that's kind of why the canopies, like the bed canopies, are so neat, because they're just constructed in a way that they're going to be a very effective Faraday cage without the gaps. And so, like, once you get in one of those with a meter, I mean, the thing just goes quiet. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, this second homestead I bought here came with like a outdoor bed, like a swing bed on the patio or a hanging bed, and so I get to, I could wake up with the sun, I get fresher all night, and so I'm really excited to put your. I mean, it's probably overkill, but to put your canopy over that and see how I sleep, be pretty cool.
Okay, sure, yeah, yeah, and you can always compare it, like, you know, sleep with a canopy for a week, and then maybe like move it or something, or move the
Yeah.
mattress and sleep
Well,
like without it for a week.
have you heard of the Aura Ring? There's all these track. It's better than like a lot of the other tracking devices, but it has an airplane mode. So um, it uh, it shows. Some people say it's like 50% accurate, but it shows like your deep sleep, your REM, and then when you wake up throughout the night, and it'll give you like a sleep score. But that's been kind of good, even if it's not 100% accurate, for me to test different things in the bedroom
Okay,
and see what works. But
yeah, get some data, definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's what it really all comes down to, because so much of this stuff can be tested. And um like we were talking about before, with devices, and with the clothing, and some things can have a psychosomatic effect, and that's why we have double blind placebo testing, and that's available, and you could do that with shielding fabric. And so that's the beauty of science, because I like both. I'm not the guy that like waits for published studies to act, because that's stupid. I mean, there's so much we can do now that will be published. The publications may never come, and if they do, they always lag behind. So I don't wait for published science, but I like measurement, and you have to look at anecdotal evidence, but you also have to prefer some good quality studies that are like double blind placebo. And that's what really frustrates me about, and what I constantly try to tell people about all these like EMF protection devices, because there are a million of them, and they keep multiplying. They're like that Star Trek, Trouble with Tribbles episode. I mean, that is like EMF protection devices. And so we've never carried any of those. We've certainly looked at a lot of them, and I've talked with many people, practitioners in the Building Biology Institute, scientists, about these devices, and I have not seen a device that is compelling enough, that I would use it or sell it, and I haven't seen any really good quality, like double blind studies on any of these devices. And that's what I would like to see. I mean, if something, because I'm very open minded, I know that, as we talked about before, materials, different materials, like there's like the shungite and stuff, and which is a natural material. And yeah, maybe it does something. I'm not going to like discount it. Now I haven't seen any measurements that it does anything, but there's stuff that we don't know how to measure yet.
right.
Because you know 100 years ago we didn't know how to measure any of this stuff, and so that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means we don't know how to measure it yet. So but that's why, in order to recommend a device, I want to see a double blind placebo study. And so I really think that virtually all these EMF products out there, these protection stickers and pendants and all these little gimmicky things, that they come out with really flashy, convincing marketing. They get some testimonials. They get some people on the psychosomatic results, and or sometimes they even pay like a researcher, but it's that they pay some like guy in some Eastern European country that supposedly has a PhD in something, and he writes a report saying, "Oh yeah, it works." That's not science, and so really, it frustrates me. I think most of them are complete fraud and scams, and currently, I don't recommend any of them. If that changes, if I see something that works, if I see something that they actually do a double blind study, because you could pop out some cheap plastic pieces and that don't have the little protection chip inside of it, and compare it to the ones that do, and you could do that in a scientific study, and then you could get the results. You can take blood markers, like what they've done with Stetzer filters. They've done tests with neurotransmitter levels in urine, blood markers, other devices besides the Stetzers. I mean, you got like heart rate variability, and then you can do the survey of symptoms and how the person is feeling. So you've got a lot of ways to gather data, and that you could do it, excuse me, in a double-blind placebo study. And I have yet to see one of these devices that has done that.
I really like your grounded approach, and I emphasize that to people that follow my work. It's like, do the stuff that you can measure first, and then if you want to mitigate in these other ways with these devices, then go ahead. But do the stuff you can measure first, because a lot of the devices I've seen, the whole idea is that they're creating a scalar field or another field that's not blocking, but it's just providing your body another field that might be stronger, like a stronger signal.
That's what they claim, yeah.
Right.
But we can't measure. There's no way to measure that the field is generated, and then the companies refuse to do any clinical studies, double blind studies.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and you can do animal studies too.
Right.
And you don't even need to double blind those. Like, I mean, that's stuff they've done with other EMF protection methods, like the Stetzerizer filters. You can, or you've seen where they expose even plants, like seedlings, to microwave radiation or something like that. I mean, you could use plants, you could use animals in a humane way, of course, and you could study these devices to see if they do anything. But I've never seen it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of anecdotes though, and I wonder, the placebo effect can be pretty powerful. My next project after the sensory deprivation room, you might like this. I have 1,000 pounds of lodestone. It's a lot of people don't know about it. They mostly hear about shungite, but it's magnetite. It's been struck by lightning, so it's made of iron, but it's basically it's how they made the first compasses. It's like a magnetic rock.
Okay.
And I think maybe you sell, it's like a little magnetic meter, just a very simple analog, just needle. And I put it up, and I think it hit like 20 Gauss or something on this huge boulder I have, but I'm going to build a bathtub out of it. And I was thinking of EMF shielding the bathroom, and then making that, and trying to just create like a natural magnetism healing bath chamber.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like that's something, magnetism definitely, there's definitely published science on that, and that definitely has an effect on the body. We don't fully know and understand all the effects, and I definitely think you're better off, like, if you can get like your whole body in a magnetic so what we're talking about is a static DC magnetic field, from like an actual material, so we're not talking about something electric or electronic. So, like, I guess what I'm getting at is like one big large magnet that, and I think what is it? It's the south, right? It's the south pole of the magnet that people usually say is like beneficial to health, I believe. Um, but yeah, like putting your whole body in a magnetic field would be preferable to putting your body in a varying magnetic field. That which is actually another part of building biology is to look at the mattress on a bed. So um, we'll use like a compass and a string, and you can beds that have the metal springs inside. You can slowly drag the compass along the bed, and you'll see the needle go different directions and change because of the springs. Because when steel is manufactured, um, the the stress that the steel undergoes can change its magnetic effects, and so you're going to have different springs that are magnetized in different ways, and then any fields that they get exposed to can also change their magnetic effects too. So as they're traveling and stuff, and so you get this bed, and you've got different magnetic fields on all different parts of the bed, and then you're lying on it, and different organs and different parts of your body are getting different magnetic fields. And normally in nature, that wouldn't really be a thing. Normally in nature, you just have the Earth's magnetic field, and it's going to be kind of, yeah, and which can vary in different places of the planet, absolutely. But the place where you're standing, it's not varying. You're getting one static field there.
Yeah, I had Dr. Dean Bonley on the podcast. You probably heard of, I mean, he's been around for I think a couple decades, but he started different from Niken. It was like another supposedly better, like a magnetic bed, like magnets that you put under your mattress. And his
Okay.
idea was you only get hit with one polarity instead of both. Depending on which hemisphere you live in, you would like flip the pad. But I slept on that for like 3 or 4 years, and I stopped because I think I just overdid it. It was like 20 Gauss. um, and I was mostly using it for the heavy metal chelation because he had a good lecture on YouTube called like magnetochelation, and
Mm.
he was using like DMSA and DMPS, like pretty like hardcore heavy metal chelators combined with magnetism to kind of push the metals out of
Wow.
the brain, especially. And he saw huge results in his clients. It's it's probably a safer way to do it than a lot of the other heavy metal chelation therapies. But I
Okay.
just don't know
Very
long term.
interesting.
Like, have you had clients that slept on magnets or?
I don't have, yeah, I don't have a lot of info from that because we're usually discussing like the electrical and the electronics stuff. I know like clients have mentioned it over the years, but yeah, I don't have like some real data I could share about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of experimental stuff. His theory is that the Earth's magnetic field is now half a Gauss, and it used to be like 2 to 300 Gauss or something. So, kind of like they say, like we're eating less oxygen and whatever, everything's like lower. But yeah, when it comes to like PEMF and artificial magnetism and these, EMF devices that are beneficial, I always proceed with caution and just I'm careful not to overdo it. Um, like I know some people will even sleep on like PEMF mats, and that
Hmm.
seems like a little overkill. Like 8 hours on a PEMF mat.
It's yeah, I mean it's experimental, and it's definitely biologically active. So the fields are definitely active, and we don't know. Um, kind of like a drug, it could help in one area, and while I'm like more, I'm not like huge on pharmaceuticals, of course, but drugs do help people at times, and but they can help one person, not another, based on that person's needs. And so the energy is the same way. Um, all this stuff interacts with the body like a drug, and so it's a it's a big experiment, and it's going to be fascinating. But yeah, I think we need to proceed with caution, and kind of go back to that gold standard approach, like in the Building Biology Institute, and which is nature is the gold standard. And so I'd prefer to like just get my environment super super close to nature first, get rid of all the artificial stuff as much as possible, shut the power off. Like, that's something a lot of people don't talk about. And I'm uh my goal is to help people. Um and so one of the best ways to that people can benefit is shutting the power off in their bedroom at night. Simple thing to do. Something anyone can do for free. Well, virtually anyone, unless you're like renting a room and you can't touch the breaker panel. But like, virtually everyone can do it, and it's free. And you can, try that for a week. Try that for 2 weeks. Sleep a few days with the power off, sleep a few days with the power on, and it's incredible what it can do.
Yeah, I don't know why I haven't done that. I guess I was looking into like the kill switch thing, which people build in, for their whole house. But
Sure.
I could just walk down to the breaker and just turn off the bedroom right before I go to bed, right? That's what you're suggesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, turn off the bedroom, and if there are any rooms like nearby, like right below or above or next to, go ahead and hit those rooms as well. Really, the more stuff you can shut off, besides like heating, cooling, stuff that you absolutely need. For refrigerator, don't shut that one off. But yeah, the more stuff you can shut off, the better. Really, the cleaner your environment's going to be, and that's measurable. Like we use the body voltage kit is, although it's not a scientific way to measure, because everybody's body's different and it's totally unscientific, but it's actually a very useful tool. It's just a practical, useful tool that's very sensitive. And so that's something we carry. You can also use an electric field meter, but a good one is more expensive and oftentimes not as sensitive. So a body voltage kit is a really good way. But yeah, you start flipping breakers off. Every single breaker you flip off, like in a typical home where the power is unshielded, it's Romex cable. You just have your like plastic covered high voltage cable, which is totally just a bad idea. Every single breaker you turn off in the house will change the reading on the body voltage meter. Every single breaker. It's unbelievable how interconnected the circuits in a Romex house are, and how those fields will interact. So basically, it's putting someone on a bed. You put a test subject on the bed. I usually have them lie on their side. They hold like a little metal rod in their hand that's hooked to a voltmeter, and the other end of the voltmeter is hooked to a source of ground, like an outlet. And the AC fields, the alternating current electric fields from all the wires in the walls and floors and ceilings of the house, interact with the body and change the reading on that meter. And so then you have another person. So you put each person on a cell phone. The person on the bed has to lie still. They can't change position or wiggle around or move their arms or legs or anything. They have to lie completely still on their side. They're looking at the meter. Then you've got another person at the breaker panel. You're linked up on cell phones, on speaker, and you're flipping a breaker, and the person is relaying the reading that they're getting at the bed. And that's how you measure body voltage. And so yeah, every single breaker in the house that you flip will change the reading.
Or like walkie-talkies, right? I have a few of them.
Yeah, you can do that. It's just like you'd have to like leave them on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because the person can't move, so they can't like hit a button or something.
Oh,
and actually sometimes I've done it with walkie-talkies where it can change the reading. Like a cell phone a little ways away won't change the reading. So
that's pretty cool. That's a good little fun experiment to do. Yeah, I'm inspired because I've actually never done that. So it just sounds like a practical thing, and just maybe get a little red light to walk back to your bedroom, because I have a little bit of a walk from my breaker box to the bedroom. So.
Yeah, exactly. Get like an old fashioned, rather than like an LED, maybe get just like a little lantern that has like an incandescent type bulb, and have a little light filter over it or something, or just wear your glasses, like.
Right. Well, Shaun, do you want to jump into that Q&A? Because we have some good questions here.
Let's do it.
There were a lot of questions about like shungite and the EMF devices, and I think we covered that pretty well. Your thoughts on those?
Yeah.
Not a fan of stickers, of quantum.
Nope, nothing quantum or harmonizing or anything. I mean, I think some of the like crystals and rocks and shungite are pretty, and actually even some of the like man-made like organite and stuff like
Yeah.
that is pretty.
Mhm.
Um, I still prefer more natural aesthetics in my environment, so I would purchase like a crystal or a geode or something before I got like a organite thing. But yeah, I don't
Right.
recommend them as a protection. And I think maybe one last point on it, without beating a dead horse, but one last point would be like it's like it's appealing because it's a quick fix. It's like a quick fix pill, but it doesn't work. And so I think it has that appeal because people are like, oh, I can just buy this, and then I don't have to like worry about whether my laptop is grounded or whether I have the
Mhm.
right adapter or things like that. Well, unfortunately, you should worry about that. You should worry about your laptop and whether or not it's grounded properly and once. And you shouldn't waste your money on something that's going to give you a false sense of protection and security, and that's not doing anything. Yeah, I really detest most of those things.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard stories from friends where they like plugged in one of these scalar emitters and like another person in the house started getting extremely like ill or like having like a lot of symptoms come up without being aware that it was plugged in. So that's where I
Okay.
start to question where it's like, whoa, okay. And I've heard like maybe five of those stories. Again, just anecdotal, but that
Yeah,
makes me
yeah.
wonder.
That I mean that does. Yeah. Okay. So like one of them is Earth Calm,
Mhm.
and over the years I've had many people say that they bought these Earth Calm devices and they have like multiple settings on them, like 1, 2, and 3 or something, and that they like 2 was too much or 3 was too much, but 1 was good and they thought it helped, and other people didn't like it and they sent it back. So yeah, some of these, a few of the maybe like plug-in type devices could be producing something. But I'm just really weary of that because you know it's like, what are they producing? How is it measured? Like
Mhm.
we I haven't talked to anyone who's actually measured what they're producing. And so I would always do the approach of let's clean up the environment, let's shield, let's filter, let's clean, let's move things away, let's focus on our lighting and stuff like that before we like try to find a quick fix solution that's doing God knows what or doing nothing at all, but wasting our money.
I like that. Yeah, I think it's just logical to start from things that you can measure and go from there. If you want to go wild trying other stuff, but at least get the like this stuff that you're sharing is really foundational and proven. So um, yeah, we had a question here: how to help children in classrooms that are across the street from 5G towers.
Oh boy.
They're hitting our schools
Gosh.
pretty hard, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, I mean, besides ensuring that they're getting a really good diet and, maybe upping on like the antioxidants
Mhm.
as a protective measure. I don't know. I mean, ultimately people need to campaign and get these things moved away from schools
Mhm.
and really shove the science in the face of everybody. Send like some affidavits, like some certified mail affidavits, so that school boards and local governments officials are personally notified of like a paper that's published showing health effects, right? Then they can't say, well, we weren't aware of it. That they can't use ignorance as an excuse because they've been made aware. Maybe holding holding people personally accountable for health issues. Suing people individually. But ultimately, we need to get those things out of there because, yeah, I don't. Back to the protection devices. Yeah, I wouldn't do any of that. Maybe clothing, but we still don't have enough information on the clothing yet. And so really the only thing you could do is, besides solving the problem, solving the actual problem is like, if you had a bunch of people smoking in a room, you'd want to extinguish the cigarettes, and that's what we need to do, is extinguish the cigarettes, get rid of those towers. Otherwise we can just try to boost the kids health.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, I mean, I guess this is a super context question, but let's say hypothetically, like I was a teacher and I was in the situation and I was aware of the 5G, I could paint like the side of the classroom that's in between the tower. Like, could that be helpful?
That could.
Mhm.
So yeah, that and window films for the
Mhm.
windows.
Mhm.
A lot of windows do a pretty good job of blocking, but they vary so much that once again, we have to measure. But I've seen a lot of windows on the market that just do an incredible job of blocking. I mean, a lot of windows block better than the building materials of the
Mhm.
your outer external walls of your house. Like a lot of times windows block better than those because they have that treatment for energy efficiency, which reflects radio frequency. So yeah, if the like if we could get the principles of building biology into schools more, and make the schools bring in fresh air with fresh air ventilation systems that are constantly bringing in fresh air and expelling stale air that's full of VOCs. Okay,
Mhm.
if we could get them to care about the lighting and whether or not the lighting pulses and the spectrum of the lighting that the kids are being exposed to, if we could get them to care about the electrical emissions that the lighting is putting out, because actually a lot can be done, like a grounded screen can be put over, and that can greatly reduce a lot of the high frequencies that kids are exposed to. But LEDs and things can have filters built into them properly. The power supplies to the lights can have filters built in that greatly reduce or eliminate the high frequencies being put into the environment. So yeah, that along with radio frequency, where you go room to room and measure, and parents can do that, like with a safe and like you could go into your kid's school with a Safe and Sound Pro 2. What you do is um, like what I do when I'm on assessments for clients, I use a cell phone to record video. So the cell phone is in airplane mode, everything's off, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi off. You just using your cell phone as a video camera, and you're recording what the meter is picking up. Well, now you have now you have video evidence of what is in that environment, and then that combined with all of the just vast amount of scientific literature that shows that the stuff is biologically active, and that there are risks, um, that can be used to campaign to lower exposure. Like well, we can lower the exposure to Wi-Fi in the rooms as well. So I think that's the best way to protect the kids, is to make people aware of it, take videos, put them up on the internet, share them, share the science with people, and just try to educate one another. And that's the best that we can do, so that policy will catch up. No, not only policy, but I mean it's individual responsibility. Like, um, technology is cool, technology is fun, uh, but it's not always healthy. It's not always healthy physically. It's not always healthy as for society. Many cultures over the history of humanity have been careful at what technologies they'll adopt, and how it will change uh, the way their way of life. And I think we need to be more aware of that with technology, and how it affects our way of life, and um, but definitely the physical effects. So yeah, encourage them to use the building biology approach and measure and reduce.
That's amazing. You brought up LED bulbs a few times, and my friend owns a red light company, like red light therapy. He he does a lot of cool like citizen science like studies, and he took like different meters to different brands of LED bulbs, and he actually found that the flicker rate was like less than 1% on these certain brands, like sunlight ICO and TCP, he said, were good.
Okay. Interesting.
Even lower than like this incandescent sunlight, which was like 7.65 flicker percentage. So yeah, that's been kind of spinning my brain for the last 6 months or so, because I used to think all LED bulbs were just bad, but according to him, it
Well,
depends on the brand or something. There's like
well,
details.
first off, incandescent bulbs don't flicker. I would describe what they do as like a throbbing, right? Because if you think about it, they don't actually shut off completely. When the voltage reaches zero, or as the voltage decreases, they start to cool down, right? And then when it reaches zero, that's when they're cooling the most, and then the voltage starts again, the current flows again, and they start heating up and glowing more brightly. But as they're cooling down, they don't stop glowing completely. So it's, they just kind of go from like white or yellow down to orange, and so it's kind of a throbbing effect. Whereas LEDs, it's like on off, 100% on, 100% off, with that flicker. And so I think that's a very different effect on our nerves, because I think that's hitting our nerves more like a jackhammer, that flickering. And I think it's very unnatural, because you don't have that kind of flicker in nature. I don't believe that fast flicker.
Do you think having like a lampshade helps to have like a barrier between the bulb and you, if it is LED?
I mean, it would just kind of lessen the brightness of it, which I suppose would help. Yeah.
I have my whole house here outfitted. I mean, I'm fully off grid, so like LEDs are the like the obvious option, but I have red, orange, and yellow bulbs throughout the house. So,
Okay.
only
Now,
some
I
work
mean,
light.
you can power LED. See, so LEDs run off of DC.
Mm.
It's just that we use AC for our grid and in our houses, and so it's the conversion from AC to DC that creates all the dirty electricity, all the radio frequency, all the junk, and it's also that is the cause of there being a flicker. Well, I mean, a lot of times the flicker is built in there as a design, but what I'm saying is you can run an LED elements can run off a DC, and they would not be flickering at all.
Hmm.
If you give them a battery. So if you ran, I don't know what voltage your battery bank is at, but like now, like 48 volts is better than 12, because you can distribute it on smaller gauge wires, but you could distribute DC power, and then you could run LEDs off of DC, and there'd be zero flicker.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I actually converted from I think 12 to I think I'm on 24 volts. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's interesting. Again, so many nuances. It's kind of fun, but
Yeah. So I think that is the future. I mean, I think God, I think we'd be way better off doing DC in the homes and having battery banks, and that would give us a little independence and protection. I mean, and talk about plus like solar. I mean, I run solar panels. I've got a little battery bank. I keep getting letters from my HOA that I'm not supposed to have them, but trying to work on that. So, but yeah, I like that independence, and I like DC power, because it's just more natural. It's a one-way flow of electrons. They're not stopping and reversing and vibrating back and forth. They're not. And that's why we get a lot of those frequencies generated from all these electronics is going from AC to DC is what's causing these frequencies.
Wasn't like Thomas Edison and a fan of AC, and Nikola Tesla was like, or Nikola Tesla was all about AC and Edison was DC.
Yeah, the current wars, and so there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But I think now we're better equipped. We have better technology where we could do more on DC, and of course I think we'd all be better being less reliant on a grid as well, and using
Mm.
less energy and being less reliant on a grid as well. Certainly be a
Mm.
lot healthier. If you look at the power grid, it's like, I mean, I don't, God, I wonder what the overall efficiency is like of power distribution. I mean, like 50% or less. Like,
Right.
I mean, we lose so much to heat.
Mhm.
It's lost to heat, and then the energy is also put into the earth as well, because our grid is connected to the earth, and the power companies don't want to update their wiring. They don't want to run more copper because copper is expensive. So instead, they keep pounding more ground rods into the earth and just using the earth as a cable, and that causes magnetic fields, and it also causes like what Dave Stetzer was talking about with all the current, what we call
Mm.
ground current that's traveling on the earth. And yeah, you go stand outside barefoot. Yeah, you're getting exposure. Go stand outside barefoot with both feet on a piece of aluminum foil. Um, then you're not getting the exposure up and down the body,
Mm.
because
That's a
you've
good,
put both feet at a equal potential.
that's a
But
really good.
you'd still be getting the benefits of grounding,
Mhm.
with less risk.
Hmm. Is it like that? Does the inverse square law go into effect here with grounding? Like, I guess my question is, like grounding here where my neighbors are far away and I'm kind of out of the city, would I be getting less of that ground current versus like doing that in LA or like New York or something?
That really depends on the condition of the grid
Mm.
and soil conditions as well.
Hmm.
And then your um, the relationship of like where you are, because like soil deposits, and then like where's the nearest substation, how's the power distribution laid out, all that comes into play. So um, generally you're probably better off, but you'd have to measure, you'd have to compare,
Mhm.
you'd have to stick two ground rods like 25 feet apart or something, in both places, and measure and compare.
Hmm. That makes sense. Um, Someone asked about the correlation between EMFs and mold. Have you looked into that? Like I've heard that like Wi-Fi increases mold growth.
Not not in depth. I've heard like rumors about it a lot. Um, and I mean, I think I've encountered a few studies on it, and so I would need to read more, but it sounds completely plausible, completely and utterly plausible.
Mm-hmm. Someone says if I can't turn my router off, what are some tips for increasing safety in the home? Would you say that breaker trick? It's a good one.
Yeah. So the breaker, grounding computers, um, maybe using some filters in the house, or trying some filters. Now with the Wi-Fi, if they can't turn it off, I mean, like we carry a couple routers. The most popular lately has been the JRS Eco router. So we carry that. Ships right from our central location in Illinois, and that's been a super popular thing. I mean, that's a router that can be configured. I mean, it comes right out of the box. It's way lower exposure. Um, you're talking 90+% reduction. Really more like 95+% reduction, and then there's a few settings and things that you can do on it to even make it, well, like that router has the a sleep mode, so it can actually shut off the Wi-Fi when no clients are connected. So like if nobody's around with their phone or tablet, or if you shut all your phones and tablets and computers and things down, the router shuts up. The router completely stops transmitting. Um, but it transmits at a much lower uh, power, and it transmits much less often, because a typical like router from an internet provider is probably going to be pulsing 20 times a second or more. Um, and it's going to be pulsing at just full power.
Wow.
So you're getting, your body's just getting smacked just with, once again, kind of with a jackhammer. It's like just all day long, all night. That's damage that your body has to clean up and deal with, and so this router can reduce that by really into the high 90s percentage, your exposure.
Wow. Do you think it's worth upgrading? Like I have a Wi-Fi, like it's a TP link. I think it kind of sucks, but like I said, I have that turned off. Is it worth switching to like the one that you sell, the wired only router, or if the Wi-Fi is off, it doesn't make too much of a difference?
Yeah, so I mean, if you have like an aftermarket router that you bought that did not come from your internet provider, because you cannot trust their routers, like even their routers, even if you can actually get the Wi-Fi off, which you always can't. I mean, which sometimes you can't always get it off. But if you can, sometimes it'll come back on because they'll do an
Mm.
update, they'll do a refresh, they'll do a configuration, and then boom, your Wi-Fi is back on. You don't even know it unless you pay attention and use a meter to measure. But if you have an aftermarket router like that and you turn the Wi-Fi off completely on an aftermarket router that you bought at a store, then it should be fine.
Mm. Okay, cool.
Yeah, then I wouldn't have any concern about that.
Um, this is a really interesting one. I actually just traded in my truck for like a F-150 like hybrid. Just because I thought it's kind of cool to have like a mobile generator with me. Someone
Mm.
asked about your thoughts on hybrid cars with electric batteries, and I don't think plug-in, just like just actual hybrid cars, like non-plug-in. Your
Gotcha,
thoughts on
gotcha.
if they're harmful or
I mean, even even regular cars, even gasoline engines with ignition systems, are producing EMF and EMR, um, and can cause sensitive people, or really are causing all of us issues. We just don't realize it. So I don't have a whole lot of experience measuring vehicles. But you would need to use a spectrum analyzer to look at the radio frequency spectrum. Um, and then you'd also have to have a way to look at some of the lower frequencies, like the magnetic uh, fields as well. And you'd have to look for static and varying magnetic fields.
Hmm.
But I've had a lot of clients over the years that have had issues with hybrid cars and electric vehicles, because they're not the problem is they're not designing these things. They're like, engineers keep operating off the assumption that human exposure to EMF like doesn't do anything. I mean, the EMF doesn't do anything to humans, and that's the engineer's take, because people don't die right away. You know,
Yeah.
um,
But when
so
when the
so
guy
like,
was
if you don't keel over and die, or get extremely sick immediately, then it must be safe. But that's not how exposure to these things works, and latent effects and chronic effects. So they need to look at these, and they need to, but there's much they could do with filtering and with the layout of circuits, and to have magnetic canceling effects, so that we're producing fewer magnetic fields, we're producing fewer high frequencies and things like that. And that's what they really need to do. But
Mhm.
we have to demand it as the public. We have to demand it.
Yeah.
And part of how we demand that is just coming up with better products, and then people will buy them, and then that'll force the manufacturers to improve their products.
That's awesome. Yeah, when the guy was showing me the computer in the car, like you have to connect it with like the app, and then there's like it's all integrated with like satellites and Wi-Fi, and I was doing my best to just turn everything off, Like, this I think that's one of the most practical things, right? If you buy like a 2021 car, it's like turn off the Wi-Fi. Like you don't need that when you're driving, right? I mean, you'll lose like Apple AirPlay and certain things, but um, just
Yeah,
wire
yeah,
things.
Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and like try to measure it. Measure it
Mhm.
with, or even maybe bring like a Safe and Sound Pro 2 while you're car shopping,
Mm-hmm.
and just like go into the cars, start them up, see what's on the meter, compare it, get into the settings, like see if you can shut that stuff off, and and maybe put that into your buying decision. At
Mm-hmm.
least, the very least these manufacturers could do is just make sure it's straightforward and easy to shut all that junk off.
Right.
So like clean up all the power, like clean up the power distribution in a vehicle, um, whether it's hybrid or just regular gas. Clean up the power in the car, and then if you're gonna offer all that wireless stuff, at least make it optional.
Mm-hmm. I'm dying to ask you about, and I have no idea. I've never heard about these. The DNA, PX DNA filters. Are these like dirty electricity filters that you sell, or?
Yeah, that's right. So
Mm.
yeah, so they're a little different approach, where they're drawing high frequencies, so they're shorting out high frequencies, and converting them to heat, rather
Hmm.
than like the Stetzerizer filters use a capacitor, which shorts out high frequencies, but it converts them into lower frequencies. It converts into current,
Hmm.
as well. So it's kind of changing the frequencies. I mean, even the DNA filters, they're not a perfect filter either. So they don't.
Hmm.
I mean, they do also change some frequencies as well, but they're also burning up frequencies. Like one thing you may notice, like when you turn on a resistive heating element, like let's say you have like those little like electric teapots or something like
Hmm.
that, or you or even a toaster. I mean, anything that's using a heating element to heat up. And when you turn on one of those devices, and you're using like the Stetzerizer meter, you'll often notice a decrease in the dirty electricity, because when you turn on that resistive heating element, um, dirty electricity is allowed to flow. The voltage is allowed um, to flow through that, and then the current convert to current, and so you take out that voltage, you take out that the high frequency of voltage there,
Hmm.
with the resistive heating element. So the DNA filters are kind of doing that.
Hmm. That's cool. Yeah, maybe I'll get the inline filter because, yeah, my dirty electricity is pretty high. Even being off grid, I was so surprised, and I still have like 15 Stetzer filters plugged in throughout the house, and if those weren't plugged in, I think my reading would be like 2,000 GS
Oh wow.
units.
Okay. What? Yeah. Inverters are just terrible. The way they're designed. We definitely need uh, we need better technology with inverters. But yeah. What kind of readings are you getting now?
I mean, I think it's below 100 generally, mostly throughout the house, but I have like one outlet that's just buzzing all the time in my kitchen. I'm like, maybe this needs to be rewired. So
Interesting. Okay. Now, you mean the filter is buzzing when it's in that outlet?
no, just even without the filter plugged in, it's kind of making a hum.
Is it a ground fault outlet, like with the little buttons on it?
I, I believe so.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's yeah, it's probably a bad. Yeah, I really hate ground fault outlets. Yeah, they can go bad and cause trouble. So yeah, it sounds like you need to get that replaced. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, now with an inverter, what you may want to look into is the DNA line filter,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that it these other filters, like the Stetzerizer filters and the DNA, like the RX DNA and the PX DNA, and those are parallel filters, so they're kind of like tap-in filters, right? You like plug them in, they tap in, and they help filtering. The DNA line filter is a pass-through filter, so that's and rather than a parallel, it's a series filter. So when you hook that up, which that's something an electrician does. That's a big
Mm-hmm.
filter an electrician hooks up, and all of your current passes through that, and it filters all of your current as it's passing through the filter.
Wow.
Or it's actually it's acting as like a barrier. So it's making it so those high frequencies can't travel there.
And you would put that in between the inverters and the breaker box, or?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So
Mm,
you'd put
mm,
that right after the inverter.
mm.
Right after the inverter. Yep.
Interesting. And was it your website or maybe another? I saw like shielded outlet plates. Say, or, I don't know.
Yeah. We don't carry those. I mean, they can help a little bit. You're gonna have you can have a little bit of a magnetic field by an outlet. I mean, you can buy
Mm,
metal plates anywhere too.
mhm,
Number one, so you can buy
mm,
metal plates anywhere, and then as long as the screw contacts like the metal without, sometimes you have to like um, kind of brush the paint off where where the screw hole is there,
mhm,
like the recessed like screw hole. You brush the paint off there, scrape the paint off so that the screw can make contact with it. Then metal plate's grounded, and that will lower electric fields a little bit. But in most houses, I mean, all the wiring in the walls is Romex, so it's like, yeah, it's probably not going to do a whole lot, but it could be a very small hack that
mm,
you could do easily. Um, as far as magnetic fields, it's common to have magnetic fields at switches and outlets if there's current flowing there, because the wires inside that box behind the switch or outlet are separated. And
mm,
so when you have the positive and negative, or the black and white, when those two wires come apart and are separated from each other, then you get more of a magnetic field. Now it's
mm,
still what we call a point source, and so it's that magnetic field doesn't go out very far. It may only come out a foot at the most or something.
mm.
Usually not even. So it's normally not something that is a big concern. Um, I would, yeah, I would definitely focus more on like using filters and grounded
Mm.
shielded cables and grounding a computer and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, and that's just a few more questions if you're still good on time. Like that's a
Sure,
good
sure.
cool. That's a good segue. Someone asked, what are the best strategies for people who live in dense populated communities? And I mean, those dirty electricity Stetzer filters like changed my life. Like you almost don't need a meter. I mean, when I plugged them in, I felt it. I mean, ideally you measure it, right? And you have a meter, but
A lot of people report feeling it right away. Yeah, a
mhm,
lot of people. It's so common. So yeah. Besides that, um, making sure like laptops that you use are grounded, moving things away from you. Um, really, I really encourage people to get the meters and measure, because you can always speculate, and
mm,
you can optimistically hope, or you can be optimistic or pessimistic. You can speculate, but even, I mean, I've been into countless homes, countless businesses over the years as I've been measuring for myself and for other people, professionally. And um, sometimes I'll come to a house and be like, oh, this is going to be terrible. This house is going to be bad. This is going to be
mm,
bad. Go in, it's actually good.
mm,
And then there's other times like, oh, this house should be nice and low, and it's terrible. It's off the scale. So you really gotta measure, because there can be things like wiring errors or wiring code violations, and wiring errors that should never have occurred. Some are accidental, some are because of sloppy electrical work. Um, and you'll never know that they exist, because they're not going to affect your outlet, they're not going to affect your light. Everything's going to work and turn on. Your circuit's not going to, your breaker's not going to blow, or trip. You would not know until you bring a meter in there, and then you're going to realize, like, I've been in this environment that's terrible because of wiring errors.
mhm.
And we've dealt with many clients that are ill, and we can go in their house. They don't own meters, but they can show us, which areas of their house are the worst,
Mm,
and tell me, like, this is where I feel bad, this is where I feel sick.
mm.
And our meters corroborate that completely, 100%.
Wow.
And then we fix the wiring error, and that issue goes away for them. That health issue goes away. Or we clean up all the um, Wi-Fi, all the all the Sonos speaker systems and the smart thermostats. I mean, now I've seen Wi-Fi in uh, water softeners and air purifiers. I don't know why anyone would ever need to have Wi-Fi in either of those things. It's just the dumbest thing ever. But they're putting it in everything now. So like, just get rid of all that stuff. And the best way to get rid of it is by measuring, so that you can identify. Because you'd be surprised at which devices are bad. There's printers. There's just inkjet printers on the market that some of them you need to actually physically unplug the power to the printer to get that Wi-Fi signal to go off. Because you can disable it, you can shut it off in the user interface, but it doesn't actually go off. It's still putting out the radiation. So, yeah, have a meter and measure. Really reduce the radio frequency as much as you can. Get some natural. Change all your lighting to. I really like the halogen replacements they're just like incandescents, but they're like energy saving halogen. They look just like an incandescent bulb. They operate just like an incandescent bulb, but they're more efficient. So they use 30% less electricity. And so you got some efficiency, they're not as big of heaters as incandescent lights, or, basically heaters that give off a little bit of light. But so halogens are better. Do that versus the LEDs and compact fluorescents. Just don't use them until we can really identify which bulbs, which is what we're doing with a new project. So we've launched a new website. It's still a little bit in development. The membership is going to be open very soon, and so we're launching a building biology website where we're going to test products, review products, and feature discussion on all these nitty-gritty details, so that people can know, like, okay, what type of bulb should I use? Okay, this is the best brand, this is the best model. And it's all independent, because we don't we don't deal with companies or work with companies or allow any bias there. I want what's healthy. I have children. I want what's best for them, what's best for me and my family, and I want to help people. And so with this new website, which is buildbio.org, and it's hyphen, so or I'm sorry, I have .org as well, but it's build hyphen bio, so build-bio.com is going to be the main website there.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, I'm really excited, because we're going to bring so many minds together. We're going to bring so many people together and so many minds together, who can look at these problems and provide the measurements, who can provide the knowledge and the experimentation, the testing. It's going to be really, really cool. A lot of people sharing information is what we need these days.
For sure.
Good information, filtering, because the internet is just full of conflicting garbage. So you need to get, people need a place where they can go to get accurate information, and that's what this is going to be.
That's amazing. That's really cool. A question that came up is, I just keep thinking about the breaker in the bedroom, turning that off. Is there a remote way to do it? Like, because I noticed in your website you sell like a remote circuit cutoff kit. Is that something different? To be able to turn off a breaker remotely or something?
Yeah, that's exactly what that kit is. Yeah, it's actually it's not expensive, so it's super reasonably priced. Really cool setup that you can control multiple circuits, and actually you can expand onto it too. So if you need to control it, like out of the box, you can control up to 4 circuits.
Wow.
But if you need to do more than 4, you can easily expand onto it and do more. And you can do separate zones as well, so that you can have up to 4 zones, like A, B, C, and D. So you could have like master bedroom, guest bedroom, kids bedrooms, things like that, or different areas of the house. Or if there's some device in the house that you want to be able to shut off easily, like you could just wire up that that one circuit, whatever it is, to that to a different zone. But yeah, you have a little handheld transmitter that only transmits when you push the button. So it's not like
Wow.
talking back and forth or anything. It's just a quick momentary signal that we're not worried about. And yeah, you just click that, boom, power's instantly off. Click it again, power's instantly on. So you can get into bed, lie down, hit the button, boom, you're set.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, because I was like, it's just one more thing to do. I mean, even though it makes a huge difference, but walking down to the breaker box, turning it off, it's so convenient. I mean, if someone's turning off their router, they can just hook it up to a remote thing, right? That they sell and just press a button.
Yeah, exactly. You could have a single remote thing for that, or like I said, I mean, for a router, I really want people to get a router that's low emissions, so that during the day when they have it on, that they're not being exposed to all that radiation. So I really, really want a low emissions router. Of course, I prefer people to wire up as much as possible. But yeah, you could easily shut it off that way. And then, the house, I mean, like, going to the breaker is cool because it's like, you can do it today, you can do it tonight. And you can experience that and be like, wow, this is like, my quality of sleep was different. You can, use that ring you have, and like, you'll be able to see like a difference in the sleep. Dreaming is different. Overall feeling when you wake up, like feeling of, well-being and like, hey, oh great, a new day. I'm refreshed. I feel good. I'm ready to go for it. You can get that from shutting the breaker off. And so yeah, I tell people to go do that. After you do that for a little bit, you'll want to get the remote control, because then you won't want to have to walk there all the time. But it's so worth it. It's so amazing how well you can sleep like that, because it's more like being in nature. You're putting your body in a state closer to nature without those fields, or with much less fields, much less fields.
I love it. This was so much fun, Shaun, and I like that you shared so many free things that people could do, and they could spend thousands too, or they could do both. And that's probably the optimal thing, is to do both, invest in your health and shielded products and meters, but also just doing the free things, like turning off your Wi-Fi at night and, turning off the breaker in the bedroom. So this was awesome. I'll put the link below to your site, Electra Health, where people could check out all your products, and Build Bio, when that's live, I'll put that down there too. And yeah, just thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your wisdom.
Oh, yeah, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for having me, and best of luck to you. And I'm sure we'll talk, and we can look at some of the cool things that you're doing there, and give you some more stuff to experiment with.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks, Shaun. Stick around as I close out the show. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
What an information dump, right? Hope you guys took notes. So much stuff there. I know I'm going to re-listen to this one, and I often don't re-listen to my own shows, but there was just so much here, and sometimes it's hard for me to catch it in the moment. I really liked his breaker box tip to turn off the breaker to your bedroom before you go to bed, or put it on a remote or a switch. I recently had a bunch of electrical work done on the new home with the solar setup. I have solar panels, batteries, and inverters being fully off grid, and they had to tie together a lot of the breakers. And so I'm going to probably put in a whole separate breaker box to have more room and to divide it up better. And your electrician could do that if you own your house. You can really divvy it up to where your lights, only the lights of your bedroom are on this breaker, or a specific wall or whatever. You have to play around with it. But that's definitely what I'm going to do. I do believe in the Blue Shield and the Somavedic. I've had experiences. I've seen people have experiences, non-placebo experiences, where they don't even know it was plugged in and they feel an effect. and they're feeling different, and then they find out their family member or roommate or whatever plugged it in. So there's something to those. Everything else that I see coming out, little quantum emitting devices, I'm really skeptical. I'll try it, but I will be very skeptical. And I'll never promote those as the foundation of EMF mitigation. It's really important to go through steps. And there's so many free things you could do first before investing in any kind of device or EMF blocking clothing, even just turning off your Wi-Fi at night before you go to bed. That is huge. Even if you have 20, 30, 50 bubbles around you, the router in your house, in your space, in your apartment matters the most. So that's a free thing you could do. And then if you own or rent, just flipping that breaker, turning off all the electricity in your bedroom. That's a second free thing you could do. And then going on forward with that, maybe earthing or grounding while you sleep is something you might want to look into. And then buying EMF blocking clothing, basically silver embedded clothing. I've talked about this on my podcast with Daniel DeBon of Defender Shield. And there's a million companies now coming out with EMF blocking clothing. I think you could even make your own fairly easily. I've seen people selling silver little cloths that you can sew into your pockets so that you're not lowering your bone density in your thigh by having your phone on in your pocket. I still would just opt for turning off Bluetooth, turning off Wi-Fi, turning off location services, and then putting it in airplane mode. That is the only time I'll put that microwave transmitter anywhere near my genitals, is when I do all of those things. Or I'll just hold it in my hand and have my hand take the hit as I'm walking around the store or whatever and waiting for a call or making funny stories to post on social media. I loved his tip about zip tying the shielded cord to the non-shielded cord, and that will actually mitigate the EMFs. And you can really take this as far as you want. As I mentioned, the practical things earlier are where to start and then how far you want to go. Just like with anti-aging practices or whatever, it's really up to you. But just getting the foundational stuff down first is the most important. I was really surprised when he said that electric fields are always there when the power's on. So that's the biggest benefit to turning off the breaker in your bedroom when you sleep, is it's coming from the walls and from the outlets. And that could be measured 30 feet away, as he said. I think this is an issue that most people are not aware of, and they have no idea how much this messes with their digestion. Even when the food touches your saliva, like starting at that level, that's altered with these fields. It really matters. It's really foundational. We're not talking about biohacking or extreme health here. This is foundational health, to be aware of these things. And your environment definitely affects your health, and you can only be as healthy as your environment. So I'll put the link below where you can check out Shaun's website and the products that he offers, the products that he's carefully selected that he wasn't able to find anywhere else. He definitely has the best prices on the Stetzer dirty electricity filters. I really don't know how he got the price that low, especially with the combo packs. I think that's an awesome place to start, especially if you're renting or you live in an apartment. Apartment complexes really slam you with EMFs, and it's actually pretty hard to be healthy in an apartment. And whether you have weight that you can't lose, or skin conditions that you can't improve, or brain fog that's not going away, all three of those issues can solely be caused by EMFs. It's incredible. And of course, iron overload definitely makes you more of an antenna, but iron overload or not, you're going to be getting slammed with these fields if you're in close proximity to other people or just living in a population dense city. That's a big reason why I moved out of the city to a more rural environment, was to decrease my exposure for free, essentially. I mean, it was expensive to do it, but once you're there, you don't have to mitigate as much. But I still have a lot to do on this house. I'll be sharing that journey on my social media and on the Mitolife Academy. I plan to experiment with a lot more. I have the bed canopies on the way, the Swiss Shield Ultra, to test those out and see how that affects my sleep. A solution like this seems a lot more practical than painting a whole room, or some people have done their whole house in the EMF paint. And there's a lot of issues that can come with that. I think we talked about that in the podcast, where you have to be careful. And a lot of people get bad effects from that EMF blocking paint because they just did it wrong. Maybe they didn't ground it. There's so many variables, but I liked Shaun's solution to the children in classrooms getting hit with 5G towers right next to it, just painting the wall in between. I thought that was really cool. And that's definitely more practical than getting some quantum emitter that may or may not work. Like I said before, experiment with that stuff. I only believe in a couple of those things. I use them all the time. I have them on all the time. But start with the things that you could measure with meters first. And that's why it's really great to have some meters around. One of the first ones I got was called a tri-field meter. And it's cool. People use it for ghost hunting, and it's not too accurate. But then you can move into things that are much more accurate with antennas coming off of it, like a real radio frequency meter, or the Safe and Sound Pro that Shaun talked about. So check out his site. I think it's worth investing to mitigate this issue. And if you can, hardwire your house. I think that's the best way to do it. And that's what I do here. As always, if you want to support the show, you can go to matt-blackburn.com. I have all my recommended products up there. I've been talking a lot about Transcription's methylene blue. It's kind of fun to take. They're little lozenges that you break up in quarters. Each lozenge has 4 milligram doses in it. And there's been a lot of human clinical trials done on methylene blue. It was originally an anti-malaria drug. So it's antimicrobial, it's neuroprotective, it's an antioxidant, it's an electron donor. It increases both short and long-term memory consolidation. It's a mood enhancer, increases ATP production, on and on. I use this every time I drive. I'm going on a long drive, even just to get errands done. It just provides to me like a buffer from the stress of the vibrating car, of having rubber tires below you and being ungrounded away from the earth, with all the EMFs hitting you both from the car and just the ambient area. A lot of freeways have cell towers or 5G towers along them now. So really stacking the odds in your favor. I personally combine EMF blocking underwear, pants, shirt, jacket, sometimes a hat, methylene blue. I prefer the Just Blue. Their other product called Blue Carnitine has caffeine, hemp extract, basically CBD, and nicotine. So it's almost like a speedball combination. I'll take that sometimes if I've eaten food and I can handle the caffeine. But usually I just take the Just Blue, that's just pure methylene blue, and I feel just 4 milligrams. But people that weigh a little more or that aren't as sensitive could try 8 milligrams and see if you feel that, or even a whole troche and see if that gives you an effect. But it's definitely something you feel. That's the cool thing about methylene blue. And it's very useful with today's issues that we're dealing with. If you can read between the lines, it's very antimicrobial, if you get what I mean. And if you want to try it out, if you use the discount code Blackburn for transcriptions, you'll save 10%. And my brand is called Mitolife, based on the mitochondria, which is kind of trending but I think people are doing a lot of the wrong things for the mitochondria, like fasting when the lysosomes are full of lipofuscin, which impairs autophagy, and fasting just makes it worse. It's harder to get rid of that substance. So my products are based around the CLF protocol, which stands for calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. 3 things that accumulate in the body that I believe are the primary cause of all the disease conditions that we see today. So a lot of the products are out of stock right now. Hopefully by the end of August, a few more will be back, like the vitamin K and the vitamin E. And I'm working on bringing the other ones back. And a couple new products will be coming out very shortly in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. So that's all. I love doing this. I love talking to experts and learning and integrating new things into my life and refining my health routines. And thank you so much for listening. I have a new episode released every Friday, and it would mean a lot if you share this show with your friends or coworkers or family or whoever you think can benefit from this information. See you next week. Stay supercharged.